Hello, everybody. Welcome into Up on Deck. Very special episode today. We're joined by the great broadcaster for the Rochester Red Wings, Josh Whetzel. Josh, welcome to the show. Great to have you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
So first off, you've been calling Red Wings games for a while now, almost 20. Next year will be your 20th year with the Red Wings, right?
Yeah, this past season was the 20th year, but only the 19th season because there wasn't a season in 2020. So yeah, however you want to do the math, but yeah, around 20 years.
Gotcha. How much has the game kind of changed since you've been calling minor league baseball?
Oh wow. Well, that's a kind of a loaded question. It's changed a lot in terms of how minor league baseball has been played, especially from my standpoint, and also how my preparation as broadcaster. That certainly has changed a ton too, because when I started in the mid 90s, maybe the internet had been invented. I'm not sure, but I certainly didn't know about it. And I wasn't really using the internet very extensively until probably 2001 or 2002, something like that. So just from that standpoint to begin with, I mean, it used to be when we would gather our statistics for a game, we literally got them faxed to us on the old fax paper and sometimes the fax machine would get jammed up and you'd have to call the stat service and have them resend the statistics. Now you can just access whatever stats you want from the internet. And so the information we had available when I started was a lot more limited than it is now. And it required a lot more work to actually accumulate that information, which I think probably actually has benefited me now because, nowadays it's kind of easy to get stuck maybe on your laptop and just looking up stuff on the internet that you can certainly use in the broadcast. But I think a lot of the times the best information and stories you get come from actually going down to the field or the clubhouse and talking to players, coaches, managers, and people like that. So my preparation has changed dramatically just because of the advent of the internet and how much information is available so quickly that way. But as far as how the game has been played, if you're a fan of Major League Baseball, it's changed quite a bit over the last 20 years. And at the minor league level, it's changed probably even more because when I started, a lot of minor league coaches and managers could really try to win, quite frankly. And now, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of minor league managers, winning is very much down the depth chart as far as what they're trying to do. It's more about doing what their major league organization tells them to do as far as playing certain players and that sort of thing. It's really a lot more almost exhibition game like than it used to be, which is, I mean, I get it, but it's really unfortunate from a fan perspective and as somebody broadcasting the games because, you get the feeling a lot of times that the games you're broadcasting at the minor league level kind of don't matter, which is unfortunate. Major League Baseball has taken over minor league baseball, which I think, unfortunately for people that follow minor league baseball and watch it a lot, has not necessarily benefited a lot of people at this level, which is unfortunate. I mean, but that's, they're not going to put the toothpaste back in the tube, unfortunately. So I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer there.
Yeah. Anybody else? Do you got some, Jake?
Yeah, I was wondering, since very recently the Rochester Red Wings went from the Minnesota Twins organization to the Washington Nationals organization, what's it like being part of an organization like the Rochester Red Wings and having to change organizations like that?
Well, in Rochester, the franchise here has been around continuously longer than any other minor league franchise in America. And since they were first affiliated with the St. Louis Cardinals in the late 1920s, they've only had 4 different major league affiliates. So it's been very consistent here as far as being with one major league organization for long stretches of time. And so it was unusual going from the Twins to the Nationals. I think from my perspective, learning new people within the organization was kind of invigorating in a way. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, I had an extra month to catch up with that because in 2021, which was the first year of the Wings affiliation with Washington, the start of the season got pushed back a month. We were, hoping we would start in April. That didn't happen. And so I had an extra month there to prepare for that. But it's been interesting, just learning new people and new coaches and managers and just the new organization. But I mean, considering everything that's gone on the last 2 or 3 years, switching affiliations in a lot of ways has kind of been the least of our worries, I guess. But it's been interesting.
You also had to, this year specifically, because the Nationals were not so good, you had to see future major leaguers come through, like Luis Garcia, CJ Abrams, and even minor league stars who haven't made the major leagues, like Jake Alou. What's it like calling their games and seeing them potentially rise up to the big leagues?
I think that's one of the most enjoyable parts of my job, is seeing those guys that are probably going to go up and excel at the major league level. I've been fortunate over the course of my career to call a lot of games of guys that have gone on to lengthy major league careers, including one Hall of Famer, I think, to this point, Vlad Guerrero. My first year that I was broadcasting minor league baseball, he played for the team I was working for in Albany, Georgia. So that's one of the best parts about it. And really this year, one of the most exciting call-ups was Joey Meneses, who had worked probably 8, 9, 10 years in the minor leagues. He had never gotten called up, even though he probably deserved to get called up about 4 years ago and didn't, by the Phillies. And so he finally got his first ever call up this year, and he ran with it and was fantastic, really the Nationals' best hitter over the course of the last 2 or 3 months. So that was really cool to see Joey go up and do as well as he did, because a lot of people felt that he was capable of that. He just needed to finally get the opportunity. And ultimately this year is the year it happened.
Yeah, I mean, same can be said for you. I mean, you finally got an opportunity to call a major league game. What was that experience like? How'd you find out you got the call, and how was that experience?
Yeah, I had done 1 or 2 major league games before, and I'd done some spring training games, but they kind of came out of the blue. They just had an opening where a couple of broadcasters that they use were doing some other things. And Charlie Slows, who's a member of the Nationals broadcast team, called me up and asked if I would be available. So it really was a surprise to me, and a very pleasant surprise. I found out just, I guess, a couple of days before I was going to do the game that they were interested in having me come down and help them out. And then that turned into doing 6 games overall. So it was really great. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Awesome. Jack?
Yeah, I know you talked about how minor leagues are changing, and in an industry that's always adapting and changing itself. I'm curious how you've seen yourself change kind of the way you handle your job, as you've seen the minor leagues also change to more, as you said, quote unquote, kind of exhibition games, from like prep work to how you call the games.
Yeah, I mean, really, the biggest change has been just using the internet to prepare for stuff, because it's easy to go down that wormhole and just spend all day on your computer looking up things, and one thing can lead to another, and that sort of thing. Nowadays there are more players that play on your team. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Rochester would maybe wind up with, I don't know, 45 to 50 players playing for the team by the end of the season when it was all said and done. This year, Rochester had almost 90 players play for the team. So, and that wasn't unusual in AAA. I mean, almost every team in AAA had somewhere between 85 and 95 players that played for them. So you have more players to kind of do some prep work on than maybe in the past. But as far as how the game is played on the field, I mean, it really hasn't changed the way I call the game that much. And, I don't try to question the manager a lot anyway. That doesn't, I'm not in the dugout. I don't know all the things going on. And a lot of the things that strategically I think fans look at and maybe think don't make sense. Well, the manager's doing that for a reason, because he's being told to, and a lot of times, for example, these days at the AAA level, it's routine for a manager to be told a couple of relief pitchers that he cannot use that day. Generally pitchers that are on the 40-man roster. Nobody in the ballpark knows who those guys are other than the people in the clubhouse. But you might wonder, well, why isn't the ace reliever being used that day? Well, the manager has been told in no way, shape, or form can you use this guy today in case we need to call him up. And so that never used to happen. And so it's just one of those things you have to realize is going on now and deal with it. But I just basically try to call the game and tell stories about what's happening, and every game's a different day. And so just go from there with it.
Yeah. Speaking on that point, take us through a day in the life of Josh Whetzel. Like what goes on from the time you wake up to the time the game's over? How does that day work?
Well, everybody's a little bit different. At the minor league level, a lot of broadcasters wear a bunch of different hats, and in many cases, at the very least, they're doing, PR work, typing up the game notes and things like that, which is something I've had to do in the past as well. I'm pretty fortunate in Rochester that once the season starts, I'm primarily focused just on broadcasting the game, so I'm not as involved in doing game notes for the media and that sort of thing. A lot of broadcasters are, which would eat into what you try to do prep wise for me anyway. But for me, for a typical night game, once I get up in the morning, I get on the internet and start looking up things about what's going on. I tend to write down the major league schedule for that day because, at the end of the game, I do a scoreboard and I like to fill people in on what's going on at the major league level. And at AAA, especially, things that happen in the major leagues have a direct impact on what's going on with, if not your team, certainly other teams in your league. So, I kind of go through what's happening at the major league level, scan what happened the night before, both the major leagues and in the league that I'm working in. And then just kind of go from there, looking up who's hot, who's not. If at the start of a series, I'm maybe digging in more on the other team and looking up biographical information and things like that with players on the other side. I do a lot. Honestly, I spend a lot more time with prep than probably I shouldn't say that I should, because preparation clearly is a big part of this job, but I don't have much of a life. So, I'm just kind of, I'm kind of looking up things on the internet all day pretty much, and I'll take a break for lunch, maybe take a nap in the afternoon, and then back at the ballpark and, batting practice rolls around. And then I like to get out on the field and watch batting practice, talk to some of the players and coaches and, find out if there are any transactions that have taken place, are there any players that aren't available injury wise for whatever reason, if the manager is going to tell you about that, and just kind of, try to come up with some interesting angles to talk about for the game that night. But it's, every day is different, but it's also kind of the same, it can change a little bit, but I try to get into a routine where I'm kind of doing the same sort of prep work every day. And I guess it's, for the most part, worked so far.
Right.
Kind of going back to we talked about how you've been on a couple of MLB calls. Did I read correctly that you were on the call when Rivera broke the all-time saves record?
Yeah. That was the first full major league game I ever did. That was in 2011, I believe, right? 2011. Minnesota played a makeup game in New York, so it was just a one-game deal. And Dan Gladden didn't make the trip because it was just one day in New York City. And so they asked me if I would come down and do it. They asked me about that probably a month, maybe even 2 months ahead of time. And so when about, 2 or 3 weeks out, I started looking at it. I'm like, man, Rivera's going to be somewhere close to the save record probably. That'd be pretty cool if he had a shot to get it. And sure enough, that's exactly what wound up happening. And the Yankees won the game, and Rivera got the all-time save record. Now, I wasn't on the play-by-play call at the tail end of the game. John Gordon was, but it was still pretty cool to be there when that happened.
Yeah, what was the atmosphere like in the stadium? Was it like they had won the World Series, or was it kind of just like another game,
Yeah, I don't remember that well, to be honest with you. The weird thing was, again, it was a makeup game. It was on what should have been an off day for both teams. And so, it was a day game in the middle of the week. So I don't know if they probably didn't have as many folks there as they would have generally because of that fact. But obviously, a lot of Yankees fans are pretty knowledgeable about what's going on with the team. So I think they were pretty well plugged in, the folks that were there, that Rivera was going to have a chance to set the record, as far as I remember.
Right. And then we got the fourth member of our team who wants to join us right now,
Okay.
Ethan Schwager. So he's popping in right now.
Okay.
So Ethan, say hi.
Hello, how's it going?
Hi, Ethan.
Jake, you got something?
I was just going to introduce Ethan and you did.
Sorry.
So, Josh, I read the profile that Jesse did on you on the Washington Post, just I think about last month, and it mentioned that you are a cancer survivor.
Mhm.
How, I believe you were like 17, 18 years old when you were diagnosed.
Yeah, 17.
What's that experience like, even though it's been so long ago, that you deal with every day? You don't have to go into specifics if you don't want to, but
Well, I mean, it was fortunately a long time ago. And the biggest impact, I guess, physically is that, I had my right lung taken out because it was a tumor involving my lung. And so I can get a little bit winded, a little bit easier to get winded than it probably would be for a quote unquote normal person who has both lungs, which most people do. So I guess that's the biggest physical impact, but yeah, it was a scary situation to go through, obviously, when you're a senior in high school, and I wouldn't want to wish that on anybody. It was certainly not a lot of fun, to say the least.
Mhm. I mean, let's see, Jack, you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. So you're a University of Kansas alum. Are you big into Kansas basketball, or?
Yep, very, very much so. Sure.
And I know you call the University of Buffalo men's basketball games. What's that like?
It's been good. I mean, the team fortunately has been really very good for most of the time I've been doing their games. I've done their games probably for about 15, 16 years. And the first number of years were kind of up and down. They had some good seasons and some not so good seasons. And actually, Bobby Hurley got hired as the head coach there. That must have been about, close to 10 years ago now. And he was in Buffalo for 2 years. And the second year, Buffalo made their first trip to the NCAA tournament. So, and then Nate Oates, who was his top assistant, took over as the head coach.
Yes.
And Buffalo went to 3 NCAA tournaments while he was there. And of course, Oates now is at University of Alabama. And now Jim Whetzel's the head coach, and he's done a good job. So it's been fun. It's certainly a lot different from calling baseball, but I enjoy it a lot as well. And hopefully this year will be a good season for UB. They have a bunch of new guys, but maybe they'll do all right. We'll have to wait and see.
Do people ever get your guys' names mixed up, Whetzel and Whetzel?
Yeah, probably a little bit. It's kind of and it's unusual because there aren't too many WHs. Not very many names start with WH. There are a lot more Wetzels with a WE. There aren't very many WHs.
Whetzel.
So it might, way down the line, maybe it could even be the same name. Who knows? It just got changed at some point.
Exactly. I mean, so here's another question we like to ask everybody. Do you have any like pregame rituals that you like to do before every game, or is it kind of just new day, new routine sort of thing?
Yeah, not really. Other than, it's always a good idea to hit the restroom one last time before you go in the air.
Yeah.
That's generally, you don't have a lot of time during the game if something, especially it's in some ballparks, if the bathroom's a long way away. So that's about the only one I have.
Yeah.
that's a good ritual, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
For sure.
I feel it's student radio for 2 hours, and the reason I'm late is I had to go to the bathroom right before doing this interview.
There you go. Yeah.
But I mean, my question is, there are a lot of play-by-plays do multiple sports, just like you mentioned with college basketball and baseball. And I know that's like, I know that's very, very common. I know like Gary Cohen for the Mets, he does Seton Hall basketball and the Mets. And but are those your two like sports of choice to broadcast? I mean, I would assume at least baseball is, because just the pathway to get to to the professional level, you have to go through the minors and all of that. But are those your two ideal, or would you rather have done like football as well or something else?
Yeah, for me personally, baseball and basketball are my two favorites. So, yeah, it's worked out the way I wanted it to. Yeah, and I'm a lot more into college basketball than in NBA. So,
Right.
That's worked out well.
And what's like the most obscure sport that you've ever broadcast?
Nothing. I haven't broadcast anything too weird or obscure as far as I can remember. It's basically just been, baseball, basketball, and football for me. I don't have a whole lot of bandwidth to fit anything else in there at this point.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Jack, anything?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about college basketball. I think it was last weekend ASU had their preseason Moonlit Madness, which is kind of the spring training football game for basketball, the precursor. Obviously, Kansas has their late night. I'm curious if that's obviously a big deal at the University of Kansas. I'm curious if you ever attended that and what that's like compared to Moonlit Madness.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I did as a student one year. It's gotten, just like a lot of things, it's really started to get bigger and bigger and bigger since I was a student. I'm pretty sure I went to, actually, you know what? I broadcast the scrimmage for one of them, now that I think about it, with a former KU player, Mike Maddox. That must have been in like 1994. So I was interning at the local commercial radio station in Lawrence. And for some reason, the sports director of the station couldn't do it. I don't know what the deal was, but yeah, I did I broadcast the play-by-play portion of late night at the Fog, they called it, one of those years. So I definitely attended one of them, but it's a much bigger deal, and it's really more about entertainment now. Like this year at KU, they had Shaquille O'Neal as a DJ. A few years ago, they had the famous situation with Snoop Dogg when he was there, and they got in trouble with some of the stuff that he did. And so it's really become more like a big, huge party now than I think it used to be.
Yeah, and so there's been a lot of name changes lately in minor league baseball. One of your former employers, the Binghamton, now Rumble Ponies, formerly the Binghamton Mets, changed their names. What's your opinion on the Rumble Ponies?
I don't have a huge problem with that one. I mean, because there are a lot of carousels in the Binghamton area, so it kind of made sense. I think it makes sense if you're trying to sell merchandise to have a different name than your major league affiliate. So I think that one makes sense. Some of them are way too out there for me. And I initially, when teams started coming up with some of those crazy names, I always thought that I would really hate to work for a team like that, because if I was trying to advance in my career and sending out tapes of those games, I would be afraid that it sounded a little bit too amateurish. But there's so many of them out there right now that I don't think it matters. So, but some of them are kind of ridiculous and are obviously just trying to come up with the craziest thing they can to sell merchandise. But the Rumble Ponies one kind of made some sense anyway.
What are some examples of those crazy names that you're not very fond of?
Like the one in I think it's Huntsville, Alabama, the Rocket City Trash Pandas, or yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know I think they called Huntsville Rocket City, but I don't know what the Trash Pandas thing is. That one certainly jumps out at me.
Any let's see, what's the most fun that you've ever had broadcasting a game? Of course, you called the Mariano Rivera breaking the all-time save record, but like in the minor league level, what's the most fun you've ever had calling a game?
Unfortunately for Rochester, it's been a while, but in 2006, the Red Wings went to the championship series, and those were fun games. They finished up the championship series in Toledo, and Toledo does a great job of supporting their minor league teams and their college teams as well. And a lot of people maybe would find this surprising, but at the minor league level, in both baseball and even a lot of minor league hockey teams, once you get to the playoffs, the attendance actually isn't as good in many cases as it is in the regular season. I know a lot of people are surprised to find that out. but because you don't, the games aren't on the schedule, season ticket holders aren't necessarily going to come to the games, all of them. So a lot of times you don't draw as well. In this case, in 2006, Toledo had sellout crowds for all the games there. So it was a really fun atmosphere. Now, unfortunately, the Red Wings got smoked in the final game and didn't win it, but that was really fun. And really in 2005, Francisco Liriano became the best pitcher in minor league baseball. And then the next year was arguably as good a pitcher as there was in baseball. And every start that Francisco made in 2005 for the Red Wings was really a big event. And he was the one player I've seen, I think, in the minor leagues where he was really generating extra attendance for Rochester. Fans were calling up, finding out when he was going to pitch again. And our attendance was boosted in the games that he pitched. And he was just out of this world that year. He was so good. And so a lot of those games for him in 2005 were really, really great and stuck out a lot to me.
Yeah.
I have a question. I think it's an important one to ask. When you're in the minor leagues for a solid amount of time, and you see all these younger guys kind of getting their shot in the majors, and I know the first couple of years you start to be like, okay, trust the process. Like, it's going to take longer. How do you deal with your mental health kind of when you're just waiting and all of a sudden you feel like maybe it should be your shot in the majors and a job becomes open and then maybe a younger guy takes that job or something like that?
You mean for me?
Yeah.
As a broadcaster?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it used to bother me a lot more, I think. At this age, I mean, I try not to let it bother me as much now as it used to. I mean, I firmly believe I should be broadcasting games in the major leagues, but you can't put a gun to somebody's head and make them hire you. And, I've been a finalist for a bunch of jobs, but in each case, somebody else got it, obviously. And those hires turned out to be good hires in pretty much all of those cases. But, at a certain point, there's just not much you can do about it. And either you can quit and move on to something else. And maybe I should have done that. But the bottom line is, I still like broadcasting baseball games and I really like doing play-by-play. I think you can question whether I've taken the best route as far as trying to get a major league play-by-play job. Maybe I could have made some different decisions down the road and done some different things, but I just really like calling play-by-play for baseball. And so, I've been here this entire time. So I really wish I wasn't, but there's nothing I can really do about it at this point,
When you get like a trial with a team, maybe like the play-by-play is gone for like 3 days or whatever, and they give you a call, right? You've had that situation come up, right?
Where I got a chance to do a few games. Yeah, this year. Yep.
Yeah. So when a situation like that comes up, do you feel any pressure to kind of change up your style a little bit, or do you just kind of do you and because obviously it's a trial and you're starting to really, it's at least in the back of your mind, like, this could eventually be my future, and that's probably all. But knowing that you're so close to it by getting like a trial with major league team, do you ever like change up how you do things, or you're so set on what you currently do?
Well, I mean, ideally you just try to do the same job you've already been doing. It's, even though it's the same game and it's just a different level, it's, I think, understandable to have maybe a few more nerves when you first start doing it. I think I was more nervous when I did a game with the Twins in 2011 than I was recently with the Nationals. And it certainly helped that I did a handful of games this time with the Nats. So I was really comfortable doing the games this year with the Nationals, and hopefully it sounded that way on the air. But yeah, I mean, I think it's understandable that you would try to be more perfect and try to make sure you don't make any mistakes. But, you really can't let that enter into your consciousness too much, because it is going to affect the way you call a game. And you want to sound like you sound, which is, the way you would sound in a regular, ordinary broadcast during the middle of the season, maybe at the AAA level.
So were you around for Joe Mauer's final season in Minnesota? Of course, a Twins legend. What was it like he went down to the minors for a couple games in his final season. What was it like to call, some of the last at bats of one of the true legends of the game?
Yeah, he didn't do very well whenever he rehabbed with Rochester either. He normally didn't get any hits. He's just a really down to earth, good dude. I mean, in that case, as I recall, I don't think he played any home games for Rochester. I think he joined us on the road, and a lot of media people wanted to interview him, and we tried to set it up to do them all in one day, but then not everybody showed up on the same. And so I kept having to go back to him, asking him to do another interview, but he was fine with it. He was really, really cool about it. So Joe's about as down to earth as any superstar player out there. So he was really, really good to deal with. Now, if you've ever heard Joe Mauer do an interview, he doesn't necessarily have a lot of great stuff to say. He's a pretty soft-spoken guy, even though he's been doing it for a long time, but he was great. He was awesome. Yeah.
And just to put it into context, he had 3 rehab games in Rochester in his last year, went 0 for 10.
Yeah. I didn't think he got a hit. Yeah.
Anything else, Jake?
Well, we do have to wrap up pretty soon because we have like 5.5 minutes left on my timer. But we always ask not just the ritual question, but also we're big food guys here on this show. What's your favorite place to eat in the Rochester area?
Chipotle would be a bad answer, I guess. I do eat a lot of Chipotle. Rochester's got a lot of good Italian restaurants. So probably there's a place called Rocky's, which has been around since I think the 1940s, which is about 2 blocks away from the ballpark. And that's always a good spot to get some good Italian food in Rochester. And it's, like I said, it's been around forever, and it's basically just in this little house. So that's probably as good an answer as any, I think.
Yeah.
And you gotta go to order.
Not really. Yeah, they have different specials every day, so it kind of depends what day you're there. They have really good gnocchi, if you know what that is. That's really one of their specialties there.
Mm-hmm.
They also supposedly have the best tripe in Rochester, but that's not something I'm going to try. If you know what tripe is, that's not something I'm going to expand my palate to sample.
Nah. And then last question, this is another one of the staple questions that we always ask everybody is, for you, what makes the minor leagues so special?
Well, I mean, I'd rather not be in the minor leagues. I'd rather be broadcasting Major League Baseball. But if you're a fan, I mean, it's a chance to come out to games, be a lot closer to the action probably than you normally would be. The tickets are way more inexpensive. And it's just more of a relaxed atmosphere. So I think if you're a fan, it's a chance to see really good baseball. I mean, people don't realize how good AAA baseball is. It's really, really good. I mean, earlier this year, for example, Rochester faced Syracuse. David Peterson was pitching for Syracuse, and Rochester scored something like 7 or 8 runs off him. His very next start was in the big leagues, and he beat the Atlanta Braves, who won the World Series. I mean, so people don't understand how good AAA baseball is. It's really, really good. And so the chance to come out and see guys who, in many cases, if given the opportunity, could be playing Major League Baseball, and to do it for a really inexpensive price, I think is really the best thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for stopping in. Thanks for taking time out of your day to talk to us, and good luck with everything in the future, and have a great rest of your day, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got it, guys.